welcome to the 19th and best episode of the Hashcast. And I am the Hashtagonist, and as always, I have a guest cooler than myself. And tonight, I have the awesome Kahlief Adams. How are you, man?
What's up, buddy? Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on with you, man.
I was so happy that you said yes. And if you're watching the show, you probably think like, oh my goodness, like it looks so good because Hashtagonist has a whole new setup with an overlay and everything. I was like, yes, although I don't know if this works yet until I start editing. So I hope I'm not making a fool out of myself. And you might also think like, ooh, adjust your camera settings, buddy. But it's not the camera. That's just me being out in the sun for 20 minutes. And that's what I look like afterwards. So that out of the way, Kahlief, I know everything about you, of course, but if you would have to introduce yourself to someone who might have missed it, like, who are you, man? What do you do?
Yeah, so my name is Kahlief Adams. I'm 1/3 of the Spawn on Me podcast. We do a show every week that spotlights people of color in the gaming industry. We kind of got into the game about 4 to 5 years ago. We're coming up on our 5th anniversary soon. And we kind of tried to figure out what was a space that we could, tell the stories from people of color's perspectives, and especially from the Black perspective. Since all our hosts are African American on our show. And we found a community that really liked the message that we were talking about, trying to be really honest about our experiences and kind of talk about what games mean to us and how we kind of view things. And it's been a fantastic ride so far. It's been super fun to be able to kind of do this work and have people dig it and want to kind of ingest it and kind of consume it.
How did it go for you for the early years? Because I just jumped off a podcast of two lovely people who are just starting right now. But like for every person who does this, there's like 1,000 that don't. Like they just talk about it, they want to do it. Like what was the event that made you like, okay, I'm gonna hit record and start doing this?
Interestingly enough, it was a failure moment. Okay. So prior to doing this show, I ran a blog called the Spawn Point blog. Made an easy transition to Spawn on Me in terms of naming. But prior to that, I did a show on Google Hangouts called Character Select with a couple of friends. One of my current co-hosts was on that show as well. But the blog was kind of out in the world for a couple of years. We didn't have a lot of success because we were in that weird space where folks start reading kind of long form pieces. And we had some success. We did a couple of cool things with the folks over at Sony for the Sound Shapes game. But besides that, there wasn't a lot of real love for the blog. So we kind of sunset it right at the end of that journey. My now current co-host, Cicero Holmes, I brought him onto the blog to write because he had hit me up during an NBA 2K stream on Twitch. And he was like, hey, this is really cool. How do we do this? And I was like, well, totally get on the phone. We'll talk about it. He became an editor on the site. And then we kind of decided that it really wasn't doing what we wanted it to do. So we sunset that and said, well, what's the next step? We said, what do we want to do that's going to still feed that need to be able to kind of talk about what we do, but also be a little bit fresh and new and in a space that we didn't really do anything before. And we said, hey, we haven't done a podcast. We talked about doing a podcast before, so why not do it? And we started it. And kind of got it off the ground. It started off in my kitchen, or I should say in my home in Brooklyn, and his in Chicago. Hence the fictional place that we landed called Bricago for where our show lives. But it started basically there from our kitchen tables. Was trying to figure out what we wanted to do and what we wanted to say, and then start.
Yeah. What was your first feeling that you had something on your hands that was it a conference or how did you get that feeling of success?
I think one of the first episodes that really kind of pushed us forward was there was a fantastic article from Evan Narcisse who, if you're in the gaming industry or were in the gaming industry at all, you knew of his work. He was fantastic over at Kotaku and a couple of the different places where he had done some writing. He had wrote this amazing piece about African-American hair in games. And it was a conversation that we had wanted to have for a very long time, and we wanted to kind of bridge that gap. And it was very raw, the emotions that he had during that episode, because he had literally just finished writing that piece a couple of days before. So we brought him onto the show. He was really honest and forthcoming and really open with his feelings and emotions about what he felt. And we had this really interesting camaraderie already off the bat. And that was one of our first episodes that did really well because it resonated with so many people, especially folks who we wanted that thing to feel really good for. And they kind of, pulled themselves to us as a show. And it kind of sparked from there. It was like 50 episodes in where we felt like that was like the show.
Okay. Well,
that if you were like, what's the best show that you've ever done so far? It was like the episode 50, the one that we did with Ever Narcisse was the one that we did early on that we felt was super solid and strong.
Well, for me, it's obviously episode 19, the one with Captain Kahlief. This is where we're going to hit the big leagues. But
you're going to see me blush all the way through the rest of this show.
But that's why we have cameras on. Like, you won't see it on SoundCloud. Well, you'll be fine. But that's so cool. Was that the first guest you had as well, or was it like the one that made the difference?
We had some guests before that. We did a thought experiment, which was really interesting for us in the beginning because we didn't know what we wanted to do yet. We didn't really have a format down. We didn't really know what our niche was and what our voice was going to be. So we tried to figure out. We said, what do we want the show to be, and who do we want to have on the show? And it was funny. We joked around about we're just going to write a list. Yeah. We'll write a list. We'll put everybody who we ever wanted to have on the show, and then we'll see how to do it. And Cicero put down Dave Fennoy. Yeah. So if you're familiar with Dave Fennoy's work, he's voice of God, basically. His voice is one of the most beautiful things on the planet. And we were like, let's see if we can get Dave Fennoy. And we sat down, we had our conversation, we chatted for a bit. I was like, go do what you got to do, see if you can get him. We'll figure it out. If he says no, it'll just be a no. Right? It's the worst thing that anybody can say is no. He calls me up an hour later. He was like, I think we just got Dave Fennoy.
That's so good.
And I was like, what? Are you serious? He was geeking out. He freaked out. And he was so excited and so happy because he's like, this is like a person that Cicero looks up to. So to be able to kind of snag him early on and kind of give ourselves some headwind, or some wind from behind. That's not headwind. That pushes you backwards. Was really nice to be able to kind of get that thing off the ground. So it was cool to be able to do that. And then we had a couple other guests who, I personally was excited for, especially was Adam Sessler. When we got him on the show, was like Christmas morning, man. It was just like one of the things I'd always wanted to do, always wanted to talk to him. I like looked up to him and his work, and then to have him on the show and then have him, rep for us and really be excited about, what we did was like over the moon. It was fantastic.
I met Adam Sessler at my first E3, and he did not really know who I was clearly, but I was hanging out with Jake Baldino at a party. And I was kind of like hanging out because I was like the new kid on the block, right? He's such a presence, and I remember watching him before I even got my foot in the door. So I was super overwhelmed to be at a party where all these people are in the first place. Then he was talking to Bonini and said, like, the first thing you need to do is get a shrink because you're gonna be overwhelmed. Like you can be a successful one, and then one person's gonna say something shitty, and it's gonna weigh on you. And I was like, he is such a cool dude, at Adam Sessler. And then he followed me for like 2 days. But that's a good get as well. But I kind of want to touch on something you said earlier because I have this exact same problem where you just start doing this, right? You don't really have a format. Like, how long did it take you to lock in? Because your show looks super good right now. And I think do you record it on Twitch always, or is that something I just caught off the cuff there?
This is Twitch stuff is fairly new. Twitch stuff is maybe less than a year. In between the time that we started doing Twitch stuff and maybe a little bit more than that, but I think we maybe just hit our anniversary. We're coming up on it. The visual parts of the show are really interesting because I still feel like we don't have a clear and concise visual format yet. I'm still trying to nail that down in a way that really appeals to me and makes me feel like we've nailed it. On the audio side, I still think that we're even still trying to figure things out there too. Like, I think we figured out a routine, which is very different than what you actually want your end result to be. I think the routine parts make it easier for everyone to kind of know where they fit.
Yeah.
But I still have ideas of what I want our show to be. And it hasn't really gotten there just yet. So I'm still fighting, trying to get that thing there. So it's like trying to make sure that, you know, we always sound good, trying to make sure that the hardest part of going to video is just all the small things that go wrong with a stream. All those things, especially because, you know, we have a lot of guests and none of our hosts are in the same place. So we're all remote. You know, so, you know, the one thing that I love and I'm jealous of folks from like Giant Bomb or Waypoint or stuff like that is that they're all in the same room. Yeah. Like being in the same room has a total different dynamic than when you're doing it in remote places. And building that camaraderie in those spaces is so very different. So we're still working it out. I'm still trying to figure what that thing is. I have an idea in my head, but hasn't really gotten there just yet.
So I don't have to feel bad. Like I'm like episode 19. None of my episodes have been even remotely the same. I find. It's just
you should be working it out right now. Like now is the perfect time for you to be figuring all your stuff out.
Because when I look at my first episode, I had like 4 dudes on, and we were all yelling because you kind of we're talking about superhero movies, and then I had like an episode with 2 people. And I was like, okay, this is cool because I can be like have a conversation, and then I started doing 1-on-1, and I think now I'm kind of getting okay. This is what I want to do, but it's funny how that creative process just works for some reason. And what I like about your show is you already have a good thing going on, and then I think it was early this year, all of a sudden I see you pop up on What's Good Games. Kind of funny. Like, how did that happen? And I see you in Daniel Dwyer's list of content creators to check out, to look out for. Like, when did that happen? And how can I copy exactly that success?
It's been a really long journey, to be honest. Like this year has been very, very good for both the show and for me personally, in that respect, where being in multiple places in that have high profile views and high profile guests and high profile hosts and things like that has been super hard to get. It's not something that's been easy in any means. It's been a lot of grinding, to be honest. It's like if I think about everything that's led to this particular point, just today, you know, like I'm on with you right now. Like I think of everything as leading up to whatever the next thing is, and that stuff started probably at Indiecade maybe like 5-6 years ago. Like that was the first time I got a press pass. That was the first time that I actually like threw a microphone in someone's face and was like, I'd love to talk to you. So it's like from that point forward to now is all the steps that it took to get to, you know, be on GameSpot. I was lucky enough to host a thing at IGN, and that was scary because it was the first time I'd ever really been on camera. So it was a lot of stuff that got there. And I think a lot of it has been really a lot of luck. In some ways, I try to what I try to do in this gaming industry, in this space, is I want to leave doors open for other people. Like I think that that's a really important thing. There are 2 very specific folks who opened many doors for me. Sean Alexander Allen, who made Beatdown, Treachery in Beatdown City, that's coming out soon. And Sterling McGarvey, he used to write for Game Pro. If I'm not mistaken. And he was on 1UP and stuff too. And Sterling was a fan of the show, and then we met because he was in the industry. Sean was a friend of the show as well. But we were in similar circles in New York, where I started. And literally Sean Alexander held my hand, walked me around at conferences and was like, Kahlief is a person that you should know because he's doing this show that's important. And that stuff has kind of built over the past couple of years to kind of get to this point. But I still feel like I'm still trying to get over a couple other hills that I haven't gotten to yet, that I'm hoping to kind of do in this year and maybe next.
It's funny how you touched it because I kind of had not the same experience, obviously, but I also had that luck that someone who was already very established and knew a lot of people took notice. Like, and for me, that was Andrea Renee, which is like kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm bringing her up like all the time because I feel like I owe her so much. But that's that part of luck, because I still feel like, oh, without her, I wouldn't have made it. But that also is kind of like imposter syndrome, because if I would tell her that, like, I wouldn't have made it without you, she'd get mad at me.
She would. Andy's great like that. She would definitely be like, "What are you talking
but
about?"
How do you deal with that part, or do you struggle with that at all now that you're starting to feel that success? Like, how do you deal with that? Because it's a topic that often comes up within content creators. I'm very curious to see how that affected your career.
It's a double-edged sword. It's really difficult. Like, I thank Andy all the time for the things that she's helped me with. I'm lucky now that the relationship that I have with Adam Sessler has gone from fan to friend. So that has changed a lot, and he's helped us out in immense ways. And I feel like there's a two part to that thing where it's like, if you're not grinding really hard and you're doing good work, all those people will never co-sign you. Yeah. Like, those people wouldn't look out for you and be like, hey, you should be in this position, or you should be in this space, or you should be on my show, or, so it's like the foundation is the work that you do. If you do solid work and you do something that people can tell that you've taken time and thought and effort into, and want to make something that's good in a space that is super saturated, you know what I mean? Like, the fact that Andrea Renee, who's been a veteran in this business, has, I'll say, taken you under her wing in some form or fashion, right? Of all the people on the planet in this gaming industry, that's a dope cosign. Yeah. Like, that's a thing that, you know what I mean? Like, to know that she holds your work in high regard is a fantastic thing. And I think that's what it is. It's like, it goes hand in hand. It's like, you can just do what you have to do to make sure that you are really happy with the work that you're putting out while networking, while trying to figure out who you can align yourself with in good ways that isn't lecherous. It's, you know what I mean? It's not, you're not trying to pull things from people. No. You're trying to add value to what they do, and hopefully they'll do the same thing for you. Yeah. And that's the way I look at it. It's just a matter of like, I feel like we've gotten to a point with Spawn on Me where we're doing dope stuff. And now people are seeing that we're doing dope stuff, and they're like, hey, that cat is doing something that I haven't seen somebody do, or his energy or their energy is something that we want to align ourselves with. And I feel like that is one of the biggest things you can bring to this industry, and anything that you do is making sure that the energy that you bring is good energy. Yeah. And that's not just like you're chipper or you're peppy. It's like, no, you're looking out for people. You're looking out for their brand. You're looking out for your own brand. You're looking out how things align in ways that are smart. And those things will then let people know that you're safe to work with, and that you're thinking about it from a different perspective. That's not just, well, let me just get on this show and show my shirt, and everybody can be like, hey, this is me, who I am. Like, that doesn't get you anywhere. That longevity doesn't come from that. So,
and I like what you said, like just to do good. And I always feel that we are now in a phase where the pendulum is kind of swinging back, because a couple years ago it was like the biggest names, the biggest voices were the snarky, curmudgeon-y, successful people. And I think now we're getting to a point, and I think that's thanks to people like yourself who put effort into uplifting other voices and to find an audience that has always been underrepresented. We're kind of swinging into a more positive sound. Like, I don't think we're there yet, but what is your, like, you have a very significant contribution to that with the show that you do, but do you think we're on the right track with that?
I think it's moving. It's been interesting to see some of the stories that have come out in the past couple of weeks about people who we hold in high regard. There was a fantastic piece on Polygon about Greg Miller, and it was really nice to see some of the things that everyone talks about Greg in those ways be reflected in that story. And then, luckily enough, getting a chance to have seen him work in real life, just see how hard he works, and see the kind of energy that he puts out in the world, just for the want for things to be good, right? I feel like the cynical side of the gaming industry doesn't really mean anything to me anymore. No. Like I remember when people were doing that thing where it was like, we have to shit on everything that's out in the world, and we have to do, we have to do the point counterpoint thing for every single thing that's out in the space, because and it's difficult. So like in our space, we're talking about very hard things a lot. We're talking about diversity issues, we're talking about representation. We're trying to do a thing that kind of is on the periphery, and make sure not the people who are in the periphery, but the ideas about talking about it are in the periphery. Often, no one wants to touch those subjects. But I feel like if you don't do that work in a way that makes people feel welcome, then you can't have the hard conversation with the people who need to hear it the most. Like on the side of for POCs, people of color folks, they need to see representation in the spaces that they want. The folks who are anti that need a message that resounds with them in a way that they need to be able to kind of like take nibbles on, right? And it's been interesting to hear that conversation happen in multiple ways. And when folks, we've been pulled on the carpet a couple of times to be like, we're not hard enough on people who might be racist or issues that might pertain to that. Like we had a couple of folks kind of get at us because of our stance on what we talked about with the whole ninja incident. And I was like, look, the first thing we want to do is be nuanced. I said, that's the first part of our show. We want to have good conversations that are nuanced, and it doesn't mean that they have to be happy ones. It doesn't mean that they have to be ones that are kind of giving the other side the same kind of credence, because that's where we got. That's how we got here. But I always want to be honest about our feelings, and I always want to bring good energy again to the table. Like I feel like you can have constructive conversations around hard things without necessarily demonizing the folks that you can turn. You know what I mean? Like there are people in this space that just are terrible human beings, right? And then there's people who, if you sometimes hit them with a little bit of truth that's a little bit dirty and they don't understand it at first, sometimes hopefully that will make that jump for them. And sometimes you just don't get there with being as mad as those folks. You know what I mean? So,
no, I think that's true. And like for me, it's like it's a completely different world. Like I'm very aware of that. Like I got the wrath of the internet like maybe once or maybe twice in my entire career, and that was because one of my friends made a comment about Mario Odyssey, where in the commercial he had the whole sombrero like Mexican vibe, and all she did was say like, "Ooh, that's not super good imagery you're putting out there, Nintendo." And then she got a ton of shit. And all I did was like, hey, I'm so sorry you're dealing with this right now, and if you need anything. And then like I got tagged into the whole thing. And I think you're right. You can do super combative, and then you're never gonna like, I'm not sure if it's turning if is the right word. But at least have them chill out. But what I noticed was that most of these guys are like super sensitive to like the most basic of de-escalation techniques in conversation, because there's no, it's just a game to some of these people, and not knowing how much damage they're doing, perhaps. But like, I salute you for doing that, because no, you don't owe anyone your time to put the effort in for those people. So. That is I mean, my wife tells me that all the time, because she'll come home and she's like, "Why are you talking to this racist person on PSN?" I'm like, "I don't know why I'm doing this. I feel like I need to do it. It's a thing I feel obligated to do." But I feel like, again, it's like the people who you can't reach, you just have to leave those folks alone, right? But I want our show at the baseline. I want our show to be entertaining, and at the baseline, I want to be able to have fun with what I'm doing. I spend way more than 40 hours a week doing Spawn on Me stuff, behind the scenes, in front of the cameras, editing, all the stuff. Like, it is a second job for me that doesn't pay me in the ways that my actual job does. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's a passion here for what we do. And I feel like at the end of the day, our legacy will be that we hopefully got to be able to share some information with folks in a way that felt good. And also kind of move the space a little bit forward. But I also, again, like, I have perspective. I'll turn 40 this year, right?
I've seen the video game industry be many, many things over the 40 years of my life, which is pretty much the same amount of time that the gaming industry has been around, right? It's like a little bit more than that. But, you know, being able to see where we came from with Pong and Pac-Man to, you know, 2K and to you know, beyond, you know, all the games that we see out in the world that, you know, that we've gotten to, I have a little bit of perspective where I'm just like, you know what, at the end of the day, this is video games, right? Yeah. No one dies. Usually. I mean, hopefully, you know what I mean? Like, besides all the kind of extracurricular stuff that we see that has popped up in the past 10 years, for the most part, this is an industry where people constantly are looking to make you happy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, no developer goes to their job and is like, I want to make a shitty game. I want to make you have a bad experience. I want to make you sad. Everybody in this industry wants to make you happy. Yeah. So, like, if that is the thing that you want to be a part of, like, putting some joy into that is not a hard thing. You know what I mean?
No, I'm glad we see that more out because I think you're absolutely right. It is a choice to be mad about video games because the other choice is even easier, and it's just to not get involved. So I think there's a bit of like that identity that some people put on their entertainment, which is fine. Like some people do not have a lot of other interests, which is absolutely fine. But I will never understand people getting mad and making other people miserable because they don't like a thing. What I also like that you touch on is like you spend a lot of time on your show, and for those people listening or watching this, and who do not do this, you probably don't understand how much time and effort goes into creating content for you to enjoy, and that is just you, because your other co-hosts, they still put time. You're probably, like you said, you're the captain that's in your bio on Twitter, so you do the editing and whatever, but you show up because you can't miss a week, and you have a bit of a rotation, right, on your squad, because I had Tanya on a couple of weeks ago, and your Cicero, and I see a couple of names come by, but like 40 hours.
Probably. I mean with let's run it down really fast. So like every week we do a show every week for the most part. We do a Twitch broadcast, we do our normal show. We also try to do Patreon shows as much as we possibly can. Okay. So I currently do all of our social media. I handle getting our merch together. I handle any of the back end stuff that's like, you know, reach out to a developer. You know, we all do a little bit of that part. But for the most part, like I'll say 90% of the stuff that makes Spawn on Me run, I do it. Right. So that's like after a 9-to-5 job, during a 9-to-5 job, before you go to bed to make sure things are okay. Yeah. Don't listen to that, everybody at job. But it's again, it's like you get small places where, you know, I remember last like 2 weeks ago or something like that, I had my lunch break at work. I bring my home computer to work so I can edit the show. You know what I mean? So it's like you get in what you can, plus, you know, you have to deal with you have to make sure your relationships are good. You know, all those things are in that space where you're taking time to baby your baby. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's a lot of stuff. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money. You know, like over the years, going to all these conferences is not cheap. No. You know, we're lucky enough that for the first time since we started the show, we were able to kind of lodge everyone from our Patreon funds.
That's pretty good.
At E3 this year, which was fantastic. It was a goal that we set that we wanted to do, and thank you to our patrons at home, who were able to kind of like get us there. But it's not cheap. No, it's not cheap. No. It's not a quick thing that you just wake up and it's like, all right, so now it's done. Okay.
Now, I hear stories about people who get into this business and they look back like 3-4 years later and realize they're like 20K in the hole with like all the shows they went to and the hotel costs, and they didn't make a single dime. And I think that is like when you like, not at this show because this show not super successful, but when you look like a Kind of Funny or What's Good Game, like all the big ones, you might get an idea like, oh, there's a lot of money to be made because these guys are making a lot of money. But like I said, like there's 1,000 failures for that one success. So if you plan on getting into this, like, yes, you're probably going to want to spend some money. But don't be that person that is bankrupting themselves to be able to talk about video games, because you really don't need that to happen to you.
No. And I mean, and the cool thing about it is, you know, like, whenever people ask me about, like, you know, what's it cost to kind of get in the door, the foundation now, the kind of, you know, the entry point is low when it comes to how much money you need to spend to podcast well. Yeah. That's not that expensive anymore. No. Networking and getting in front of people is expensive.
That is expensive. Yeah.
That is expensive. That's where your money gets spent. Yeah. You know, like, I think I did the circuit, which is basically, let me see, GDC, PAX. Luckily, we've been able to go to E3 for the past couple of years, so that's an addition. And then there's like small off things that are just like, you know, you're lucky enough to get to go see a game early. Yeah. I'm, you know, moving from the East Coast to the West Coast afforded me a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to have done. Like, the show wouldn't be where it's at if I was still in New York.
Yeah,
like, moving to the West Coast was a huge boon for the show.
I only get invited to stuff that happens in Montreal because it's like 2 hours away from me, which is like one studio that invites me until now. Like, bless their heart, Square Enix, because I always get invited to that stuff. But like, I feel it every time. Like, oh man, if I was in LA or if I was in San Francisco, I could do a lot more. But my wife's like, no, I make more money than you. Like, we're staying right here.
I mean, and that's the thing, right? Like, bless my wife. My wife is the reason why 90% of Spawn on Me works, is because, you know, she's bringing home the bread, and she's like, you know, we both work, but it's also just like a significant amount of the money that comes into our household. Some of that money goes directly into Spawn on Me being a thing. Like, she understands that this is the thing that I'm really passionate about, and she's willing to support me in that way with funds from our family. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, the rest of the crew, they will definitely go to events if they have the opportunity to. But a lot of the stuff that was the foundation parts of, like, going to a lot of those conferences and being on that coast, I sacrificed a lot of time, money, and effort to make that stuff move. But it's also like, every week they take time away from their folks too. You know what I mean? Like, they take time and money and effort to go to E3 now, or to, you know, to go to things that are local. So it's like, I love the hell out of my team. Like, my team is super dedicated, and they really do appreciate, you know, the process of what this looks like now, because it is something that's growing still. You know what I mean? It's a lot of folks who are in this space. It's funny that you talked about kind of Andrew and kind of funny folks. They have been in this industry for almost a decade, probably actually more than a decade at this point. It's taken 10 to 15 years of grinding to get to this point where they can have a Patreon that's successful, because they are banking off their names and the work that they've done over the years, right? You know, our friends over at Gamertag Radio, same thing. Like, they're able to do stuff that a lot of folks aren't able to do because they've been in this game for 10 years, 10 plus. So it's like, you know, it's a long grind if you want to make it and be successful. You know, like, a lot of folks are not making those moves yet because it's still early.
Like, your name has to be out there at least a little bit. When did you get active on Patreon? Is it recent, or is it been going on for a while now?
We started Patreon has been interesting, actually. Patreon, this is our second go around with Patreon. We did a Patreon at first, and then it started to get some traction, and then we were like, oh, wait a minute, you have to pay taxes on that. Oh shit. What do we do about that? And then we kind of shut it down because it was like we didn't figure that part out. So we kind of didn't know we were really trying to offer to our audience, which was important to kind of pull back and scale back and try to refigure that out. And now we've done it again, and we're probably maybe about 6 to 8 months in. And Patreon is the most difficult thing I've ever done. At this point, it is literally the hardest thing that we've done so far with the show, because it's such a difficult thing to try to figure out. Are you giving value to your community? Are you giving value to your audience? If I mean, our audience is fantastic in the way that they will reach out to us in some ways, but they're also very quiet when it comes to Patreon stuff, which is which I don't know. It makes me feel weird. I'm just like, you just gave me your money, but you're super quiet. I don't know. Like, I want to reach out more to be like, well, what else do you want so that we can give it to you? But it's also like, I don't know what's happening, but we are lucky enough to have you here. Thank you so much for believing in us. So it is a hard nut to crack where we're trying to figure out, what that means. I have ideas again, like in my head of what I want the 10-year plan, or at least we're year 5, like the 8-year plan of what I want to be able to say that we are able to do. And some of that stuff may come to fruition. Some of it may not. But I feel like we've been lucky enough to have people, again, rock with us and feel like we're doing something good in the space that they want to, share and spend their money on. And that means so much to me personally, that people really just don't understand. Like, as a person who has failed at many things in their life, this has been the one thing that has been semi-successful. And to have people feel like your work is good enough that they will share their hard-earned dollars with you, people need to not think that that's like a thing to just like be really just like nonchalant about. Like, it's not. Like, people out here working hard, busting their asses. And anybody who gives us anything, I'm so happy and so like feel lucky about that stuff. So like, I'm always super thankful for that. It's just a hard thing to kind of figure out what you want to do and if people really want that thing. Because everybody can get everything now. There's so much content. So it's like, it's hard to figure out if the stuff you're doing is really working.
It's funny because my Patreon experience is like super dumb. Because I made a joke one day on Twitter saying like, okay, I should start a Patreon so I never have to talk about Batman versus Superman again. And then people were like, yeah, do it. I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I made like a jokey Patreon page. And then people actually pledged money. I was like, okay, fuck. Now I have to take this serious because people are actually giving money. And like, I'm sub $100. Like, it's absolutely like minor compared to the big ones. But still, like you said, it's hard-earned money. And I'm like, I'm doing a show. But I think it has helped me take this more seriously. And now I'm actively looking for good content. Well, otherwise, without that, it would have been still now episode 19, probably like 6 white dudes screaming about video games or movies. And now I have discovered my, well, not my talent, but I think my thing, what I can deliver to the audience. And I'll do that freely now because people are actually helping me do this. Because without, even if it's, for me it's like $60, like it's not $39,000, but still without that I would have had to pay more than $60 every month because a show like this is expensive. It doesn't look like it, but you need the editing software. That's $60 a month alone. I had a Patreon shout out to Hunter Pearson. He gave me a license for because he had one lying around.
That's awesome.
I was like, well, you just basically saved the show. Also, he pays for the shout out, so there it is for you.
Right.
But it's just fantastic. But it felt so weird in the beginning because you're not asking for money. Basically, you're just doing stuff with what people are willingly giving to you. The only thing I always worry about when I look at some of the more successful patrons is the idea that they say like, okay, this is a business now. Like, this is a business agreement, and I work for you now. And I don't 100% agree with that. Because you want to have the ownership over your content. Like, is that something you deal with, struggle with, or like, are you very rock solid saying like, no, this is what we're making and everything you do is super welcome, but you don't get a say? Or do you have a healthy balance for that?
Well, I think that I mean, you have to have a vision for what you want your content to be anyway. So I feel like, and if we were to if we were to just go subscription based, right? And we were to say, we're not going to do Patreon anymore. We're going to just do it just subscribers. Yeah. That's different. You know what I mean? Like, that's a different show because literally they are paying for your existence at that point. You would still be doing it because you want to be doing it and you find it to be fun, but you're like, hey, you want to be a part of, building this into something bigger than what it is. then it's a put your money where your mouth is kind of situation. I think if we were doing this the same way that Kind of Funny was doing it, or What's Good Games was doing it, where this is paying for their this is bringing in their bread and butter, this is their main source of income, then it's different. I'm lucky enough to have a 9-to-5 job, and so does everyone else on the team, but it's also like, I want to be able to have that kind of back and forth with our community in a good way, where we are able to build stuff together that they actually want. And that's hard. Like, that's just a hard thing, because when you have a certain amount of people who want to do something in one way, and even internally within our team, we have those struggles from time to time. Having that then be thrust upon however many people are in our community makes that exponentially more difficult. So I don't know if that's necessarily, I don't necessarily subscribe to that thinking, because we haven't gotten big enough yet. If we were definitely doing this full time, then it would be different. Like, a lot of stuff would change just internally, externally. If this was like our main source of income, making this stuff, because then you get to have more carte blanche too, of like, okay, we get to do more stuff.
That's true.
Like, we get to do way more things that we wanted to do, because you have that kind of income rolling in. So yeah, it would be cool though. It would be funky to be able to do it. It would be fun.
Do you think, is that the end goal for you to make a living off of this? Is because you already have a big team, like that raises the bar so much higher, or are you going to be the Greg Miller of Spawn on Me if you're not already?
One day I want to be. I wouldn't mind doing the stuff Greg does. It's what it's funny that you say that. Let me answer the first question first. I'll be real honest about where we're at right now. Is you have 3 to 4 hosts who are all over the age of 30. 2 of us over 40, or about to be 40. Our window is super small, to be honest. Like, we're old. in terms of gaming content, in terms of like what I have just started to scratch the surface of doing some of that Greg stuff, right? That's like, get on camera, host stuff, be a person who's like on the scene with a camera, with speaking to people. And I always think of like, what would have happened if I found out that I wanted to do this 5 or 6 years earlier. It would have changed everything in a lot of ways. But also, who knows? Because it's like, I can't do the what if part, because the what if part doesn't make a lot of sense.
There's no what ifs.
There's no what ifs. It's just like what is, right? So I don't think our team has the ability to do that yet. Or honestly, I don't think we have the ability to do that now. It would take a significant amount of money. It would take a really good idea that is in conjunction with Spawn on Me, to do that thing. And I think that if we did do it, it would be a way that would change the way that we do podcasting in a very significant way. And I would be down for that. I just don't know if, you need everyone to be on the same page with that. And we're all in just very different parts of our lives right now. Like, we don't have the energy, the time, or the effort to be able to all do the stuff that we all wanted to do in this space. So it sucks, but it's also like kind of freeing to know that you just can't do everything that you want to do. So it makes you really fine tune what you can do really well. And for me personally, I get to run around and do, all the other side things as much as I possibly can, because I don't have any kids. It's an easy thing to be able to be like, oh, you want me to host that thing? Okay, I'll come host that thing. So I've been refocusing some of my efforts in that respect, because of the inability for us to kind of do all the other stuff that I want to do just with Spawn on Me. So it's been good to be able to do that. So it's been cool to be able to see those things kind of happen in real time.
That's pretty cool. Like you mentioned, like, we're old. I'm going to be 37 in a couple of weeks. But at the same time, I think there is still a market for old guys like us, because the demographics are definitely shifting in into our favor. I think like you always have the biggest group is going to be the the Ninja fan base, which is like 23 million. But I think if you have the content, it doesn't have to go away. So who knows? Like you might find that whole 35 plus. Like I have trouble nowadays when I look at like the hipsters, not the hipsters as in like the Starbucks, the youth with the kind of content they enjoy. Because I had my nephews over from the Netherlands last week, and they're like 6 and 10, and how ingrained they already are in the culture, which is just nuts. Because for me, it was a completely different experience. But they still thought I was cool, and I'm 36, and like I'm their uncle. But they were here, and then I got to go to the Shadow of the Tomb Raider hands-on event. So that just blew their minds, obviously. But I hope that we still have an audience 5-6 years down the line.
And I think we do. I'm harping on the fact that we're old, and maybe that's not going to like give us the ability to do what we want. I feel like we're in that generation now where all of the folks who we grew up with in the gaming space, we haven't aged out. Nope. You know what I mean? Like we're still gaming just as much as most people can with the time that they have. And I think that the perspective that we have in the space is really, really cool because we've been able to see everything transition, and we have some different perspective that comes from just being older, that we can talk about things in a way that is like not a way that the ninja groupings, the ninja demo can talk to. But I feel like in terms of the way that press is looked at, in the way that influencer looked at, as opposed to just other kinds of media, that's one of those things that we will get aged out of. It's like no one wants to see our old asses on camera. You know what I mean? Like as much as I want to be, my dream is to kick Greg Keeley off of the Game Awards and host it myself. I want to do that. You know what I mean?
You're already probably going to have a better trending gamer than he manages to pick out every year.
I hope so. That would be good. Start that now. Get me on the trending gamer. But I feel like it's one of those things that like, we do have this really cool perspective that we're able to talk about games through. And I feel like there has been a trend to kind of just go younger when it comes to that, and kind of push ourselves out of the space. And I feel like there's a missed opportunity there to do that work. Yeah. You know what I mean? You can mix up people in those spaces and it still will be fine. Yeah. And it still work really well.
Yeah. And like you said, we might eventually take a more of a background role on these things. Like I would love to be one of these old veterans that you already have walking around there now more in the background. Like Marcus Beer, he's not really in the spotlight here, but he's still a huge influence on. He's been an influence on me personally, and I know what he's doing behind the scenes. So that might be. I think we'll always be around if we are the lucky ones. But you mentioned something early on, and it is like uplifting other voices. Are you actively trying to look at young talent that you see now by opening doors for them? Like it's been almost a thread through both our careers, other people giving us opportunities. How do you see that? Like, is there anything you have in place for that, or do you just fly as you go and hey, this is an interesting kid? Or
yeah, like it depends on the situation. Like there are folks who will reach out to me, on a fairly often basis that are just like, hey, we saw you do this, or you saw you do that. How do you do that? I want to start a podcast. How do you do that? Like, being able to take some time out of your day and give people information that will help them grow whatever it is that they want to do is something I get a lot of joy out of. Like I've always felt that it was really terrible for people who just want to hoard information. And I'd never thought that was a thing that I ever wanted to do. I was like, this is a thing that everyone can do and should do. And it's not a threat. Excuse me. It's not a threat to what we do at Spawn on Me or to what I'm doing. Right. It's like the things that make you dope are the things that people will gravitate to, regardless of, who else is in the space. So yeah, like even like we're doing our first live show at PAX this year. Okay. That was awesome. A thing that I've like, I'm super excited. I'm super hyped for it. It was a thing that I like wrote down on a piece of paper of a goal. It was like, here's my goal. because I believe in that. You got to write about that stuff, and you got to talk about it. You got to say it out loud. And two folks who I think are really like up and coming in the space and really dope are going to be on the panel with us as guests.
Cool.
Blessing Adeoye Jr. from OKBeast.com. He's the managing editor over there. And then there's Grand Pooh Bear, who is like, he's bigger than we are in a lot of spaces. Like in the speed running game and the YouTube and Kotaku game, he's way bigger than us in a lot of ways. But like his story is a story where we kind of were on the come up at the same time. Like he was working a booth at I think it was GDC for iDarb. Yeah. And I met him through Mike Micah. And now he's one of the biggest, Mario streamers on the planet. Yeah. And it's like Blessing I met at a couple of different events and saw his videos on his site and was like, whoa, this is the stuff that I want to do. And we're not there yet. So like, who are you? Yeah. Who are the folks that are like doing this work? Yeah. How can I reach out and like see if we can, give you space where we are so that you can grow as well? Like, I feel like that stuff is super important. If, without people, literally taking my hand and walking me around to people. And it still happens now, like people still are introducing me to people who are in spaces that I couldn't get into. You have to do that work. Like the time on this planet is too small. It's like too short. Like you don't have a lot of time to get cool stuff done and you don't have a lot of time on the planet, period. So like, why are you trying to like guard everybody else off of doing cool stuff? Like everybody has a space to do cool stuff.
And I absolutely appreciate that. Like I appreciate you being on my show because for me that was a get. Like I'm gonna get Kahlief on the show, and we were joking about it. Thanks, Larissa, for bringing up your name because I was like, no, I can't ask Kahlief yet. I have to wait.
Shout out to Fury. I love you. Love
Fury. She's the best. But what I like to do a little throwback. Like in the beginning, you said you had a list of guests and things you wanted to achieve, and now you already do like probably a big chunk. And some of like you said, guests are now friends. If you take a look at that list that you had in the beginning, are there still some to-dos on there, or did you make a new list?
Oh yeah, we're constantly making lists. It's funny because it's been really interesting to see who we've been able to snag and how. But there are definitely folks on that list who I'm still like, if I got them on the show tomorrow, I would be just as excited as I am talking to you right now. It's like Ed Boon is, I'm a huge Mortal Kombat fan. I've been a Mortal Kombat fan forever. I froze up when I met him at a show. And like, I was just like, oh, Ed Boon, I don't know what to say. I don't know words. My brain doesn't work. And we still haven't gotten him on the show. Phil Spencer, of course, we want to get on the show. There's a lot of big name folks that we want to get, but also one of the things that I really want to do with our show is like, all the things that we've done have been for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, sure, it's nice to get the big name folks that we've gotten on our show, but it's really to uplift the smaller folks. You know what I mean? Like, it's a way to get your face in your show in front of people by having big names on it. But at the end of the day, I want that indie dev who will one day be super big and be like, we got them first. You know what I mean? That's the stuff that I really, really care about. Like the big name stuff is really great for numbers and it's great for, sending out a press packet and be like, hey, we got this person on the show, so you should rock with us. But as much as I love getting those people on the show, I really love getting folks who are just starting out the process and just learning about, being in game dev. And it's the reason why GDC is my favorite conference.
I've never been to a GDC.
Like everybody loves PAX. Everyone loves PAX and everyone loves E3, but GDC is my favorite conference to do because you get to see so many people in this industry who love what they do, get to be who they are in that space and be nerds. Like one of the coolest things I ever saw was Anton Kahlief, who was one of the brains behind PSVR, right? Super young cat. Super dope. Like I got a chance to build with him once or twice, and he's super cool. He literally stopped after doing a talk, and had like 15 people gather around him, and he just talked about how fast VR has to be to get it to work right. It's super nerdy. Yeah. It's super stuff that I don't have any idea what that actually means. He was speaking whatever language he was, not, and I'm like actual language, but like nerd language. And I was like, I have no idea what this is, but it's one of the dopest things I've ever heard in my life. It's super cool. And to see people like be able to do that with folks who really care about it means a lot. So it's like, I'm hoping that in the podcasting space, I can do that for someone else. We can do that as a show for someone else. And then, you know, that's what our legacy will be. You know, who knows how long this thing will run? Who knows how long this thing will go? And who knows how long it'll be successful? But also it's like there are varying degrees of success, you know? Like people constantly in the podcasting space are like, if I don't have 100,000 downloads every show, then my show isn't a success. Like we don't have those numbers. I wish we had those numbers. We don't have those numbers. And it's like, I am thankful for every person who picks up their phone or picks up whatever, you know, device they use to listen to our show every week to be like, hey, I remember when we literally had 2 people download the show. You know, we're in the thousands now, but it's not like mega thousands.
No, but still.
It's all perspective, right? It's like, you know, you'll get there at some point. Like you'll get there where you're like, hey, I'm pulling down these hundreds of thousands of downloads because my show is so amazing, which it is. So it's like, you know, it's all a matter of like how you look at it, what the perspective is, and what you feel is an actual like win for yourself. You know, that's a really important thing for people to have in that perspective conversation is like, what do you determine as a win? And if you can determine what that is for yourself, then you can build on that.
It's funny because before we started recording, I was on We Missed the Boat podcast, which is brand new. Like they have 7 followers on Twitter. It's a husband and wife, and they just started talking about video games that they didn't get around to playing. It's a cool format. But that kind of got me thinking myself because for a while I was like super focused on numbers. Like I said, like, okay, why am I not hitting these numbers? But now what I find important, and like now I'm like 20 weeks in, like it's not like a used thing. But when I get a response now to a episode where someone tells me like, hey, that was really fun to listen to, or hey, that was a really cool story, then also I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing it for. Because like I said, it's cool to have those big numbers and these big names, but I think there are so many interesting people that have a story, and especially if you can uplift them. Like I'm not always looking to uplift, but I'm looking to find like an interesting story. Like that is good content, and like if someone likes it, and like because this is going to be out there forever. Like if they want to go back 2-3 years ago, because all of a sudden that, like you said, like you had that indie dev, you were the first, and then they go back to your show. Like that is the cool stuff. So I can definitely relate to what you're doing there. You mentioned like Ed Boon, you wanted him on your list. Ed Boon is one of those people that got me starstruck the first time I saw him. Do you still have, like you said, a little bit, like you still get starstruck when you see these industry heroes every now and then?
It's changed a lot. It's changed a lot because of I've been lucky to been able to be in some spaces with some big name folks. And it's always really good to remember that they're just human beings. That changed a lot. And that was really different in year 1 and year 2 in comparison to year 4. You know, like year 1 and 2, I was like upset when somebody didn't say hello to me when I was like saying hello to them. And I was like, oh, that's right. You're at a conference and you're busy. Oh, okay. That makes sense now. I don't think I get starstruck now. I do sometimes look around and I'm like, how the hell did I get here? That conversation happens a lot in my head. Like I've been at some events and some parties and I've been like, oh crap, that's Mark Cerny. Oh shit. Like that's the dude who made the thing that I'm playing tomorrow when I go home. Like those things happen a lot now where it's just like you have an appreciation for just how much work goes into making the things that you love to play every day. That is a thing that has changed a lot where, you know, I used to be one of those little shits on the internet who would talk a whole bunch of crap to people on the internet and be like, your game is terrible, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm so pro dev, it's unreasonable. It's like, because like, again, what I said earlier is like, no one goes into this industry to try to make things that are shitty. Like people want to make good experiences for you. So like if a game doesn't do well, that was years of work.
Yeah.
That was long periods of time where people were not with their families. People were going to work late, early, staying after work, trying to make sure that the thing was done so that you could be like, that gets 2 stars. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, like it's a thing that you have to like really pay attention to and be like, you know what? Wow. Sometimes my opinion doesn't make that much sense. It's a good thing to have. You need to have that as a consumer. You need to be able to speak about what you like and what you don't like in real ways. But I also feel like I've learned to give everyone in the industry way more grace than I used to, because I know all the sacrifices that they go. It's a job. They're trying to do their job really well, and sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes it does.
I think that's also one of my most favorite thing that peek behind the curtain of all, and then you see the passion. Because now when I dislike a game, I feel bad about
sometimes.
Like I've been playing Octopath Traveler, and I actively dislike some parts of this game, and I joke about it on Twitter, and I want to do an episode on it for OD Hashtagonist. But I'm like, I gotta wrap it now. I have to wrap it in something good. Like I cannot just be plain salty, and it's not a downside. I think it's a beautiful side of getting your foot into this industry. But it is weird. It is weird that also like. I like to make fun of Nintendo, and then all of a sudden you're the person on social that has to read all my dumb jokes about the Switch before it came out. It's a different life all of a sudden, but it's I wouldn't trade it for the world, to be honest. It's such an honor to be there.
Yes, and that's what I'm happy you said that, because that's the way it feels, And I have a lot of folks who I see who are like right on the periphery, who are like trying to get in, and even folks who are in the industry who are like really cynical at this point and like really salty. Oh, I'm going to my 20th E3. I'm like, yeah, you're going to your 20th E3.
Yeah. Let
Be
that
happy.
sink in. Yeah.
Like let that sink in. Like, it's work, but it's like, again, you get to see and touch and play around with all the stuff that everyone who plays video games would love to be in your shoes. Like, I think about that all the time. Like, I bust my ass to get in here, and we bust our ass to get in here. But also, like, I still get to geek out about stuff that I'm like super excited to see and like play around with. I remember the first time I got to see a small thing of Dreams a little bit early, and I was like, I was at E3 when they announced it, and I was like, what the hell is this? Like, what is this game? Who knew that this was a thing? And then know that was a thing that at some point in my lifetime I'd be able to play. Like, you have to cherish this stuff. Like, it's all fleeting. I'm learning that more and more the older I get. It's like, this stuff is not going to be here forever. You're not going to be in this industry forever. It's like the NBA. Like, get in, enjoy it while you're in it, and then dip out when you're done. And it's not that difficult. Like, try to make somebody laugh and make somebody feel good, and then you win. Like, that's not that hard. It's not that difficult.
No. That's also like, I think, a perfect roundup in the discussion. That's a perfect thing to end on, because it is an honor, and what we do, we are lucky. And if you are listening to this and you try to get your foot in the door, it's going to be the hard work. You're going to be disappointed at some point, but everyone I meet that is successful for a reason, and it's hard work. It is being good at networking, is providing content, and yes, there is a factor of luck. But if you don't do the base, then that luck is not going to change fuck all for you. So keep doing what you're doing. I'm always ending a podcast on a segment they call Podcast and Shill, which is where you can promote whatever you want and where we can find you. Now, if this new setup works, your Twitter handle has been on screen all the time. But if it doesn't work, where can we find you?
You can find me personally on Twitter at Kahjakins, KAHJAHKINS. You can find our show at Spawn on Me. We're on all the podcast networks. You can find us on iTunes, NPR One, Overcast, Stitcher, and all those. We also sometimes put our stuff up on YouTube when I figure out how to get it to work. But you can always find us every Thursday on Twitch during our show there, 7:30 p.m. PST. And everybody, please, if you're going to be at PAX this year, please come to our panel. It's going to happen on Saturday the 1st in the Sandworm Theater. It'll be me, Cicero Holmes, Blessing, and Grand Pooh Bear hanging out, talking to them, and also doing a little bit of reminiscing about our 250th show.
Wow.
Coming on that day. So it's going to be a big day for us. I may cry, but it'll be fun.
Shit, 250, man. That's huge. Any your Patreon?
Yeah, please. Patreon.com/Spawn on Me. We do an after show called So Mad, Spawn on Me After Dark, which is a lot of fun, where we kind of talk a little bit of games, but we mostly talk about, just stuff that's on our minds and things that are kind of touching, things that we're seeing. We had a little bit of a conversation a couple of weeks ago. We had Gary Witta on, who came on and hung out with us just to shoot the shit. And also we had a really interesting discussion about what were the worst movies we've seen in terms of handling race in those movies. So that was a really fun episode to talk about in the past couple of days too. So yeah, please, if you are in that space, we would love to have your support, and definitely come rock with us.
Awesome. Well, I also have to promote myself because, like you said, sometimes you don't even know where your podcast is. So if you're listening to this on whatever service, you can find me at the Hashtagonist on Twitter. And also on patreon.com/the Hashtagonist. If you really, really like this kind of stuff, then you can help me keep this going and get cool guests like Kahlief on. But I would more shill for you than I would shill for myself at this point.
You're doing fantastic work, man. I've been listening to the first couple episodes. It's been really good.
I appreciate that really a lot. Good luck with your PAX West show. Like that sounds like the coolest shit ever.
I'm telling you, man, I'm gonna lose it. It's gonna be super cool. But it's gonna be something where I'm probably gonna sit down afterwards and be like, holy crap, we just did that. I don't believe that.
You've done panels before, I assume.
Yeah, I've done some panels before, but never had my own.
Yeah. Like
it's gonna be. I'm gonna have like the book that they give you, and I'm just like, our names are in the book. Our names are on the website now. It still freaks me out, but it's super cool.
Well, so if you are at PAX West, make sure you check it out. And if you're still listening, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll be back next week. And have a good night.